Right now, all employees are being evacuated from the Pentagon building in Washington because a leak of hazardous materials has been discovered in the building. It is reported that several floors and corridors inside the Pentagon have been sealed off, while others have been evacuated after the presence of certain hazardous substances was detected in the air. At the very least, automatic special sensors that detect hazardous substances were triggered in the building. And now it is reported that the system was triggered because it detected what it believed to be anthrax spores in the building. And it's important to note here that this news about the evacuation of the Pentagon comes at a time when Trump publicly stated that the US military is not only preparing a new attack on Iran, but also threatened a full military takeover of Iran's Khark island, on which almost all of Iran's oil exports depend. And now in Iran, they are calling on neighboring countries to evacuate as Iran is preparing its most powerful strike in response. And since I've already managed to get your attention with the topic of the Pentagon evacuation, I also want to discuss in this episode the likelihood of the Americans seizing Iran's Khark island. Why is it important? How are the Iranians defending it? And why has Donald Trump, already started backing down? And literally just a few moments after his statement that he would seize the island, he added that he's not sure if the Americans actually want that. And let's discuss the latest news from the Middle East in general. My name is Alexei Pechi. Leave a like, write any comment you want, and subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, in the Pentagon building in Washington, a partial lockdown was announced and several floors were evacuated due to a detected air quality issue and the threat of hazardous substances spreading. Emergency safety protocols were activated at the scene of the incident. And now Pentagon Press Secretary Sean Parnell has confirmed that internal monitoring systems detected a deterioration in air quality indicators, which could indicate a leak of hazardous substances or even a chemical attack. According to Parnell, the Defense Department implemented standard protective measures, including a shelter-in-place order for areas that were under threat. Testing is currently ongoing, which may take from 1 to 2 hours to determine the exact cause and level of danger. And now, media sources report that the restrictions affected the 2nd through 5th floors and the corridors on the 4th. Up to the 7th floor, and movement in the inner courtyard of the complex is also blocked. Mobile laboratories have been deployed there, and there has also been heavy movement of specialized vehicles from various agencies. It is also reported that Pentagon security personnel inside the blocked area are already working in gas masks and full chemical protective gear. A hazardous materials team was brought in to deal with the emergency, the Protection Agency, the Pentagon Forces Agency, as well as a team from the Arlington County Fire Department. Well, all of this sounds really frightening, especially considering that right now the United States of America is launching a new wave of strikes against Iran, and Donald Trump is threatening to bomb the country completely and even seize Iran's Khark island and the entire oil infrastructure of the country. But later it turned out that things were not as dramatic. And then CNN reported that the evacuation was initiated after the Pentagon's sensor system detected a possible presence of anthrax. However, according to one of CNN's sources, the sensor system turned out to be faulty, which led to the false alarm. Nevertheless, the police officers in the building were still wearing gas masks and full chemical protection gear. Well, now that I've finally caught your attention with this topic and you're still watching this episode, let's discuss the context of what's happening. The thing is, on that same day, Donald Trump announced that the US would seize Iran's Khark island and other oil infrastructure in Iran. This tiny, seemingly insignificant island in the Persian Gulf is a vital economic corridor for Iran and accounts for about 90% of the country's oil exports. The US president also warned that tonight the military would launch a very powerful strike against Iran, as there is currently an exchange of fire between the two countries, so to speak, and peace talks have completely stalled. And now I'll quote Trump. At some point in the near future, we will seize Khark Island and other oil infrastructure facilities and take full control of their oil and gas markets. Just like we did with Venezuela, and it brings brilliant results like Venezuela. The same goes for the United States of America. But it should be understood that Iran had been preparing for several months for the US operation to establish control over Khark Island. And back in March, at the end of March, it was reported that Iran had transferred additional portable anti-aircraft missile systems to the island. Iran also set up traps with anti-personnel and anti-tank mines on the island, including and primarily along the coastline where American troops could have landed if Trump had given the order for a ground operation. So this would be a very costly operation, even in terms of possible casualties. At the same time, Ibrahim Azizi, the head of the Iranian parliament's Commission on National Security and Foreign Policy, stated that Iran would deliver a harsh, crushing, painful response that will make them regret it if the US actually attacks Khark Island. Here is his quote. Donald Trump looks confused and unbalanced. Iran and all its territory, including Khark Island, are fully prepared. The level of combat readiness of our armed forces there is so high that I believe in the future this maximum level of military preparedness on the island will become evident. Well, he's kind of countering what Trump says about capturing the island in the future. And with all their capabilities and strength, our armed forces are in a state of full readiness, says Azizi. At the same time, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, one of the negotiators who is conducting talks with the Americans, stated that if Trump tries to seize Khark Island, it will cost the whole world dearly. Here is his quote. The wrong strategy and impulsive decisions will lead to a deterioration of the situation throughout the entire system. Destroy the energy infrastructure and the markets, and you will create an endless quagmire in which you will be stuck for many years. Then you will see a completely different Iran. And just a few hours after the first threats, Donald Trump himself suddenly started backing down. US President Donald Trump admitted that he is not sure whether Americans have the desire for a large-scale military operation that would be required to capture Khark Island. In other words, of course, he would capture Khark Island himself, but he's not sure that the American people would support him in this. Therefore, as a person who, of course, listens to the American people, he will most likely cancel this operation. So he hasn't even started yet, and he's already kind of canceling it. Well, let me give you a quote from Trump. The capture of Khark Island, a major oil center in the Strait of Hormuz, would be my preferred option. But I'm not sure if the American people have the desire for this. I think they'd rather we come back home. Iran really wants to make a deal. In general, I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this video. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave a like and click the bell so you get notifications about new episodes. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.